Welcome to the Superheroes Everyday podcast. I'm Danny Horn. Thank you for joining us. Superheroes Everyday is a comedy blog about the history of superhero movies, starting with Superman the movie in 1978 and telling the story of how superhero blockbusters became the world's most efficient way to painlessly separate money from the public and then give it to entirely the wrong people. On the blog, I'm writing about the movies in release order, but here on the podcast, we'll be covering pivotal moments in superhero movie history. Today, addressing the Shaquille O'Neal 1997 Superman-adjacent film, Steel. Now, these episodes are long because we're talking about the whole movie, so I'm using the Sid Field 3-act structure to break up the episode. So this is Part A, Steel, Act 1, and then I'll be releasing Act 2 and Act 3 later on in the week. And now I want to introduce my special guest, Anthony Strand, from the Muppet fan site Tough Pigs and the Muppet Movie Podcast. Moving right along. Anthony, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well indeed. Thank you so much for having me on, Danny.
Hooray, I am thrilled to have you. Do you want to talk about yourself and your projects?
Sure. So as Danny mentioned, I write occasionally for the website that Danny founded, toughpigs.com. I don't write for it as much as I used to, but I do continue to host Moving Right Along, a Muppet Movie podcast. Myself and our friend Ryan, I think previous guest on this podcast, Ryan Rowe.
Could be previous, could be, depends on how I put the episodes together.
We'll see, sure.
Yeah.
Anyways, Ryan and I go through all the Muppet movies 2 minutes at a time. You know, we shamelessly ripped this format off from Star Wars Minute, but we have a good time. We have just finished Muppet Christmas Carol, and we're gonna do the rest, and the movies are gonna get a lot worse. But
oh dear,
as this episode should hopefully prove, they'll still be fun to talk about.
I'm looking forward to Muppets from Space.
Well, Muppets from Space is kind of like the Steel 1997 of Muppet.
It really is.
So that'll be fun.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Anthony, you suggested that we talk about Steel. Would you like to explain yourself?
So first of all, I didn't know that your intro was going to say pivotal moments in the history of superhero movies.
I feel like this is a pivotal moment.
I mean, I guess so, in the sense that...
Depends on the pivot.
Yeah, because they pivoted away from making superhero movies that look like garbage. That's the main reason I love to talk about this movie. In almost every way, it feels like a TV pilot.
Yes, it does.
It's relatively short. It's 97 minutes long. And it feels exactly like
a late 70s, early 80s TV pilot.
Right. Well, and of course, we really can't talk about this without talking about the writer and director of this film, Kenneth Johnson.
We'll do that.
Who created the Incredible Hulk TV show. So he has a superhero background, and specifically a background in taking a very fantastical superhero comic and adapting it into a straightforward adventure of the week TV drama.
He started out, he wrote for $6 Million Man, and then he created Bionic Woman and the Incredible Hulk and the original miniseries V and Alien Nation.
And directed Short Circuit 2, weirdly. I think that's his only other theatrical feature. I might be wrong.
Yeah, his film career is not illustrious. There's a great Vice interview from 2017 that I found.
Yeah, you sent me this.
Yeah, which I sent to you, where the interviewer was trying to get Kenneth Johnson to apologize, which is amazing. He'd recently done an interview with Joel Schumacher about Batman and Robin, and Joel Schumacher admitted that Batman and Robin was bad, and so he really wanted that from Johnson, and Kenneth Johnson refused to take any responsibility for the movie at all. Like, all he talked about was, like, he didn't want Shaq, he wanted a movie star, and if he couldn't have one in the lead, he wanted a movie star in supporting role, so he kept talking to Warner Brothers and saying, just give me a couple more million, let's get a star in a supporting role. Apparently, he thinks that that's the only thing that matters to make a successful film, which is not the case. Let's run the numbers. The movie came out in August 1997. It's the same year as Batman and Robin, just like a couple months after Batman and Robin. Batman and Robin for the year was number 12, made $107 million, and was officially a huge disappointment. Steel was number 178 that year and made $1.7 million. With an estimated budget of $16 million. So definitely like an official flop. And as far as the critics go, like Batman and Robin and Steel both got the same. On Rotten Tomatoes, they both have 12%.
12.
Yeah, that's how you make a $1.7 million box office movie. I do want to take a second just to appreciate that Black people in 1997 wanted their own superheroes, as well they should. Like that, all the superheroes that had been in films before that were all white, and most of these movies like hardly had Black people in them. Part of the reason why the movie didn't get a real budget is because it's about Black people. This is specifically kind of a fantasy for Black kids. Steel was the first, and then next year was Blade in 1998. Halle Berry was Storm in X-Men in 2000, and then Catwoman in 2004. And that is it for Black superheroes into the late 2010s. When we start getting like Cyborg and Miles Morales, and then Black Panther in 2019, and Captain America and Monica Rambeau. I want to say I respect the people who made this film very much, because they really did have a sincere commitment to giving Black kids their own superhero and a positive role model that they could identify with. That being said, now I'm going to go and talk about how silly it is, because honestly, it's ridiculous, but I did want to just like give them my respect for that awesome project to work on. The thing you made is very silly. Let's get into Act 1. Tank comes out of the forest, and there's a weapon pointed at it, which shoots and blows up a tire tread, which proves that this movie had the budget for a tank to get mildly damaged. That's always the thing that I look for, is to see like what kind of budget this movie has, like if they can afford to blow up a car. And in this movie, they had the budget to damage one tread on a tank and then set off a couple squibs around it.
Right. Although you have skipped over the opening credits.
I have skipped over the opening credits. Is there something you would like to say about the opening credits?
That it's just presumably stock footage of like a steel mill. It's like we're watching like molten steel like being poured into things for 2 minutes.
Yeah.
But while this is happening, we have Mervyn Warren's theme from Steel playing the whole time. What I love about the theme from Steel is that it is a very standard John Williams Superman ripoff score, except with like bass guitar added to make it sound a little funkier. Like truly, it's like, what if Superman, but slightly funky, but still for white people.
Guy gets out of the tank and says, "That's enough, my ass is on fire." And then there's a general who says, "I thought I smelled some nuts roasting."
It's the worst.
First line in the film, which is phenomenal. There are 3 people who have developed this weapon. There is Johnny and Sparks and Lieutenant Nathaniel Burke. Johnny, John Henry Irons, played by Shaquille O'Neal.
Can we talk about where Shaq was in his movie star career at this time?
Yes, let's do that right now. Shaq was a famous basketball player, and as an actor, he is a very good basketball player.
But he got to like we can knock Shaq starring in this movie. Mm-hmm. This is the 3rd time he got to star in a movie.
I know, yeah.
3rd and final time,
yes,
of course. But Blue Chips, he's above the title, right? The poster for Blue Chips says Nolte, Shaq, Blue Chips. But then he's Kazam. He's a rapping genie in Kazam,
which did not go well.
No, and so that's 96, and then this is 97, and it's Steel. I was looking on IMDb. He has appeared in 16 other films besides those 3.
Oh, has he? I didn't even look.
Mostly as himself. Mostly can't. Right? He's in. He's in Good Burger. He's in Uncle Drew.
And he just comes in and kind of waves at the camera and says, "Hi, it's me, Shaquille O'Neal."
Yeah, exactly. So it's not like there continued to be, and rightly, I think, this belief that he is an interesting screen presence because he's so tall.
Yeah.
He's like such an intimidating man, you know, but then he's like this, he has this like gentle giant thing going on.
He's very amiable.
Yeah. And so you can see why they thought he would be could be a movie star, because he was so charismatic as a basketball player. You know, he did interviews where he's like speaking off the cuff, you know, and saying like funny, weird things.
Yeah.
And then he just seems wooden all the time.
Yeah, he's a little bit miscast because he's playing a human being in this movie.
Right.
Burke, Lieutenant Burke, is Judd Nelson, tiny man.
Sure is.
Super smug and awful. Burke is from Slytherin. Every single thing that he says, everything he says is a problem. He does a lot of like looking at people very carefully in order to establish that he is menacing in some way.
That's the thing. He has this like off-putting stare all the time.
Yes.
Every time he's talking to someone else.
That is his technique. A senator who is watching this terrible weapons test, he approaches her. He basically recognizes that she is also from Slytherin. So he comes to her and he's like, "What's your security clearance? I've personally made some adjustments that increase the intensity considerably. And she's like, ooh, so you want to murder people.
You are, I mean, you're right. But also, if we could dwell on, I've personally made some adjustments that increase the intensity considerably.
I love dwelling on things.
It's an awkwardly written line, of course, as you just said, as we both noted, because we both wrote it down. But also the way that he just like stares at her and whispers it.
Yep.
It's not like you just said it like a person.
That's true. I didn't really deliver it in the Judd Nelson style.
The way Judd Nelson says it is, I've personally made some adjustments that increase the intensity considerably. And it's like, why is he doing this?
No, I would love for you to just keep doing Judd Nelson impressions for this entire time. This is going to be great. This is going to be the best episode ever.
Okay, Danny, I think that we should continue talking about the movie Steel.
I agree. Well, always doing my best in the service of my country. Weapons testing in the Steel cinematic universe is kind of off the cuff.
They're just like in a forest.
They're just somewhere. Like there's not a lot of prep for this. Just kind of like, oh, okay, yeah. So they're in a building for some reason, like an Adobe hut. I don't know what they're in. They're in some kind of lean-to or something. Testing out this new sonic cannon. It pumps out an ultra low frequency burst of sound energy, which can take out a whole line of troops without killing them, they say. Johnny, Shaq tells us, it just leaves them stunned. Which I don't know if there's a big market for stunned soldiers. Johnny seems to have kind of a shaky idea of what weapons are about, like what he's even trying to do. But Burke is the mean, crazy guy because he really does want to kill people.
Right. But good military boys don't want to.
They don't want to kill people at all. No. Johnny and Sparks are running. Talk to me about Sparks.
Annabeth Gish. Yes. There's a movie called SLC Punk from around this time with Matthew Lillard as a young anarchist in Salt Lake City. Annabeth Gish plays his like cynical, sarcastic store owner friend.
Yeah.
So like that's what I think of her. Like I know she's been in a bunch of stuff. She was in Mystic Pizza, whatever.
Yeah.
But like I think of her from SLC Punk, a movie that maybe isn't great, but I saw it many times as a high school.
Yeah.
And her character in that is such this like cynical, detached person.
She is super earnest in this.
Yeah. And like, I don't know if that's why I don't buy it. It's just because I saw that other movie so many times. So that's who I think of her as. But she feels very not engaged with the material. Like, I don't think she's bad. I don't think she's like Judd Nelson.
I like her. I think she's trying to save the movie. A lot of what she does later on in the film is just like talk to screens. A lot of her dialogue is delivered to like nobody, and I don't know. I don't have a funny thing to say about it. I just think she's nice. Johnny has some kind of very friendly relationship with Sparky. He calls her Sparky. Did they do the finger touching here?
They do the finger touching here for the first. And when we say finger touching, we should clarify that it is like E.T. and Elliot.
Yeah.
Reaching out to touch fingertips. That's it. That's all it is.
That's all it is.
This is their affectionate gesture.
Yes.
And I have a theory that is not a generous theory towards Kenneth Johnson or Warner Brothers.
Yeah, I believe I'm about to have the same theory.
Which is that they felt that it would not be eagerly welcomed by the public if a beautiful white lady were to have a romantic relationship with a large 7-foot tall black man.
Yep.
So they don't let that happen, even though clearly that's what is like they are coded as love interests, right?
This is a love story. This is supposed to be like a romantic story, but yes, where the male lead and the female lead are not allowed to touch each other except on the very tip of their finger. Burke wants to destroy a whole building. He has just decided he wants to destroy the building. Sparky objects and Johnny objects that we have not tested those parameters, but Burke kind of says, hey, can I test the weapon instead, Johnny? And they're like, sure, because it's very casual. It's casual Friday here at the weapons testing. Yeah.
You are a trustworthy boy.
Yes, of course. You scary little man. So he comes and he turns up the intensity all the way. And Johnny reaches and he's like, no, don't do it. And he zaps the building with the sonic cannon at too much intensity. And that intensity rebounds back onto the building that they are mysteriously in, which falls to pieces, crushing the senator and crushing Sparky. who is trapped under the rubble.
And then
Johnny says, Sparky! And then he tries really hard. There's a lot of like trying really hard acting.
He does not go, Sparky. He goes, Sparky! It's incredible.
It is incredible. Yes, he does.
You are continually selling this movie short in terms of its performances.
I'm not gonna ask you to take care of that then.
Shaq, like Judd Nelson,
yes,
it's an insane performance to be the star of a motion picture.
Yes.
Like, it's very different. It's a different tone. One of the many problems with this movie is that Judd Nelson and Shaq are in different movies.
Completely different movies. Yeah. They have almost no contact. And like the trial scene actually kind of explains it. So there's a trial. Johnny has to testify against Burke and says like, yeah, it was him who increased the intensity on our terrible sonic cannon. And that is why the senator was killed. That's why Sparky is grievously injured. After the trial, Johnny and Burke have a little snippy scene in the hallway.
That scene has my favorite Shaq line delivery in this entire movie.
Do it.
By far. I don't remember what Burke says. Something about how like, I didn't know that was going to happen or something. And then Johnny says, out my face with that. What you did was foul.
Yes, he does. He does do that.
He sure does. He sure does.
Well, this scene is where we see why they can't put Shaquille O'Neal and Judd Nelson in the same scene very much, which is why I don't think they have a scene together until the very end of the movie. Because Shaq is very, very big, and Judd Nelson, comparatively, is very, very small. It makes framing scenes very difficult. Like, just trying to get both actors in the same shot is not easy for any director, really.
Google claims that Judd Nelson is 5'10", and that seems plausible.
He's on the short side of 5'10". That's going to be one of them approximations. Johnny tells Colonel David he does not want to come back to the army for weapons development. And the colonel says, but you have to come back and keep working on this. We can't turn our backs on this kind of firepower. And Johnny says, maybe you can't, but after what happened to Sparks, I can. So he has just figured out that weapons hurt people.
Right.
This is a brand new experience for him.
To be fair, 11 years later,
yes, in
a different superhero movie where a man who previously worked with the military wears a metal suit to become a superhero.
That is true. It takes him a minute to figure that out.
Yeah. Also learns that weapons hurt people.
Yeah, it does. It comes as a surprise to people in the weapons industry all the time. Sparks is in the hospital because she got crushed. Johnny comes to visit. They touch fingers. Johnny's concerned about her. She says, I'll come see you as soon as I'm back on my feet. And then Johnny catches the eye of the doctor who's standing behind the bed, who just shakes her head. We do not speak honestly to the patient about her condition. That always works out as a tactic, as we'll see. Then it's time to go to Los Angeles. Johnny is traveling by bus, very happily. Burke, very sneakily, arriving on a plane. He arrives, he goes to his neighborhood. They establish that this is like an urban black neighborhood. He walks by a little pickup basketball game. Everybody knows him and likes him. They're all like, hey, Johnny, how you doing? Welcome back. And he's very happy about that. He gets a basketball in his hands and tries to do a free throw. This is a running gag throughout the film that Shaq can't actually like dunk a basketball.
It's a running gag that he can't make a free throw, which he famously was actually bad at.
Is that right?
Yeah, it's a joke about how Shaq was bad at shooting free throws. Yes, well-known, not a talent that he possessed.
I didn't know that you could be a famous basketball player and not be good at free throws.
So Shaq averaged 52.7% from the free throw line in his career.
Is that good or bad? For
comparison, the highest career free throw shooter in NBA history is current superstar Steph Curry, 90.86%.
Johnny's he's okay with it though. He's a very happy guy. And this is, I think, the first real problem with him as an actor, which is that he cannot play happy.
Sure.
If he's angry at somebody and pissed off, like he's wooden, but he's okay. It's seeing him walk down the street just grinning like an idiot. He's just the worst. Every time he has to smile, he seems to be a very pleasant man who is not good at smiling somehow. Here comes Burke going to the arcade.
We got to say what the name of the arcade is.
What is the name of the arcade?
Damntastic.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Because it's run by Big Willie Daniels.
Oh, is that why it's Damntastic? It's Big Willie Daniels? I should look at credits more carefully than I do.
I've seen Steel so many times.
That's right. So you know all the ins and outs. When did you first see Steel?
I first saw Steel in high school, not when it was brand new.
Yeah, nobody did.
Right. My buddy Corey and I saw Steel for the first time. It was just one of those movies that we would like throw on just because it's like, hey, let's watch Steel. Like while we're just like, in college, you're just like sitting around with your buddies or whatever.
Let's just have Steel on.
Let's just have Steel on while we
Yeah.
talk about whatever.
Dantastic is difficult for me. I feel, well, it's difficult for the film, I feel, to express what it actually is. It's a room full of arcade games. It looks like it's an arcade.
It looks just like a normal arcade, yeah.
Except the people who are in there, at least for this scene, are all in suits and ties, like walking around and looking at the machines. And then there's a front desk with a secretary, which is not typical. So Burke comes in to Dantastic, to what appears to be this arcade, goes up to the woman at the front desk. He gets shown into the back office, and there is Big Willie behind a desk, well-dressed, spooky-looking man.
Yes, with like very stringy hair and a tiny face, a face that is too small for his head.
Yeah, he's a weird-looking dude. And then there's a woman, DeVray, and a guy, Singer, who are also in suits. So this is a very office-y looking office, which I don't think is typical for arcades. I feel like people who run arcades have like a kind of a crappy back room.
Yeah, and they maybe wear like a bowling shirt. Or
something like that. There are several developments throughout the film of what is happening at what kind of place is Dantastic, and what do they do there? What kinds of things go on at this location? That changes quite a bit. Right now, apparently what they do is distribute arcade games. So Burke comes in, he does his little Slytherin bit of like, hey, nice office, Big Willie. You've come a long way since the neighborhood, but you're still selling hot weapons. And Big Willie explains, no, I distribute arcade games. I'm a legitimate businessman. Burke says, how would you like to help me deal the next generation of super weapons? And it's like, well, I work in an arcade, so I don't know. Maybe. Like, we don't make things. But we find out later, one of the things that we find out is that they apparently assemble arcade games, possibly design them.
At the Dantastic, yeah.
At Dantastic, downstairs somewhere. So it's unclear. It's unclear what he does. So I guess it kind of makes sense that Burke is a little confused about that as well. Johnny's walking down the street. Here's Martin. Little Martin comes up. It takes a minute. I didn't realize until the very, very end that Martin was actually supposed to be his brother.
Right. They don't really make it clear until the end. Yeah.
Yeah. This looks to me like his little cousin. But no, apparently he's a little brother. And Johnny like greets him and says, what's going on? And Martin says, man, I got all kinds of crazy honeys sweating me. And he asks about her. He's like, I ain't be living like him. I just be chilling. Martin is a jargon generator.
Yes.
That is what he does. And he is great at it. I love every Martin scene.
Are you familiar with this actor?
I'm not.
This is Ray J. He was a kind of a rapper, like a teen rapper. He's Brandy's little brother, the actress and singer Brandy, from the show Moesha. And he was on that show as her pesky little cousin.
He's very good at being pesky.
He was good on that too. Like he just had like very solid little timing and everything.
Yeah.
You know? I don't know what he's doing now. He's just some adult man now.
he's just out there still being pesky. They go to see Grandma, and Grandma is also really cute. I love Grandma. They walk into the house. They have to whisper because Grandma has a souffle in the oven.
I mentioned to you earlier that this thing with the Grandma, the souffle, stay quiet so the souffle doesn't deflate, all that stuff. It's the one genuinely funny and charming thing in the movie.
Totally agree.
It's the one thing that works for the reason they want it to work.
Grandma wants to start a French restaurant. That is Grandma's deal. We will see her several times throughout the movie with this story arc. Here, she's trying to tell them to be quiet so that her hominy souffle doesn't fall. She is trying to start a French restaurant called Black and Bleu, which is a great idea. Honestly, I would 100% rather watch a movie about her starting this restaurant, hiring staff, and figuring out, like, getting investors and opening this restaurant. That seems like a fascinating, because what she wants to do is kind of like soul food fusion with French restaurant, which is a great idea and super interesting. We don't really find out kind of like the backstory of how she gets that idea, but I would love to know. So that's why he's got Martin and he's got Grandma Odessa to kind of give him a place in this neighborhood. He has some job offers that have come in from weapons manufacturers, and he says, no more weapons for me. He just got a job. Unclear exactly what that job is. It's at a steel plant.
Much like the movie, you are wallpapering over this from one scene to the next because the introduction to his job is such a perfect piece of we need some ADR to explain what's going on.
Yes,
because we see them at home.
Uh-huh.
And he says he's not doing weapons anymore. And then as we're panning to his new work, we hear Grandma say, so where are you going to work? And he says, I got a job lined up over at Bill Crowley's.
Bill Crowley's.
This is
not clear.
The only mention of the name Bill Crowley in this film.
Meanwhile, over at Bill Crowley's,
if they were going to do the ADR anyway to explain it, why not have him say what his job is?
The steel plant is confusing. Like Dantastic. Bill Crowley's is also a very confusing place. We mostly see him just like pouring molten steel into something.
Correct. And there are like women in like very short, scantily clad, sexy women walking around at this steel mill.
Yep. One of them has like a sexy tank top on and hard hats, and they like Johnny.
I think that's a huge OSHA violation.
100% is. All the guys, we see a bunch of dudes, and they're all wearing like correct clothing, which is, cover their whole body. But then like they got these like sexy girls who walk by, kind of wink at each other about how hot he is. And I don't know what he's working on. He doesn't seem to have a lot of projects in his in tray. He's just kind of like pouring something. And so between Dantastic and over at Bill Crowley's, it feels to me like maybe Kenneth Johnson has never had a real job because he doesn't really seem to know what jobs are like.
That's right.
That you need to have like a coherent thing to do at your job. I don't think he understands that at all. He's been working in show business for too long. The music here, the lyric is basically I'm Superman, as he's pouring this steel. Mm-hmm. So let's just talk for a second about where he comes from in the comic books. It comes from the Death of Superman storyline, where Superman dies for a little while, Doomsday kills him, and Superman is dead temporarily. And what happens after that in the story arc was that then there are these 4 people who emerge, who all are sort of claiming to actually be Superman.
Right. And the reason that there are 4 was very convenient because there were 4 ongoing Superman books at the time.
Right.
So each one of them got to star a different replacement Superman.
Right.
For that year or whatever.
So one of them was Cyborg Superman. There was a new Superboy. There was the Eradicator.
Correct.
And then there was Steel.
Yes.
John Henry Irons.
The best one of them by far.
Yeah, he was in construction, I guess, John Henry Irons, and he makes a steel suit for himself. The comic book costume, he's got like a big Superman S on his chest and a red cape.
Well, he did until he had the S during
this storyline.
Once he got his own ongoing series, in the first issue, he makes a new costume without it because he's like, I need to be my own man. And his dad is like, but you'll always be the Black Superman to us.
Aw.
It's great.
And that's why they're making the movie, is that this is the Black Superman. There are multiple references throughout the film that kind of acknowledge that, yes, that's what this is supposed to be. Over at Dantastic, Burke has set up another terrible weapons test, and Big Willie says that the front office is very interested in this. And I'm like, you are the front office.
Yeah, who's the front office if not him? Right. Yeah.
What are you doing? And so they're in this place that's like a factory floor. And we see guys putting an arcade machine together, but putting like, instead of having like an arcade game inside of it, they're like mounting weapons inside of it, I guess, to hide the weapons and distribute these arcade machines. That feels like a weird... I'll say this. If you are buying illegal weapons and they need to be shipped to you somehow, putting them in arcade machines, I think, is not your number one most effective way to accomplish that, because you've got to have a reason to be accepting, oh, thank you very much for these arcade machines. You need to be an arcade. That's a very specific role that you now have to play, is somebody, if I want to get these weapons, I have to pretend to own an arcade. They do a lot over at Dantastic. And so this is the thing they're doing now. They are testing out this new gun that Burke has designed for them, this new powerful, terrible gun. Big Willie's there. DeVray is there. This is another very mysterious thing, which is going to baffle me the whole time. Burke says that he wants to hire Martin. There's a kid he wants to hire. from the neighborhood because there's a score I have to settle.
Yeah, because it's Johnny's brother. Yeah.
The plan, as far as I can tell, the plan for Martin is I will hire him and I will be very encouraging and supportive. That is the score that he is settling. He's a pretty devious dude. They test the gun. Some, disposable extra fires it, and it backfires and explodes, and the guy is injured.
He gets mega burnt all over his face.
Gets his face all burnt. And DeVray says to whoever's there, like, "Oh, take him upstairs and call emergency." Or like say that it was an electrical fire to explain his injury. And then she's mad at Burke for letting this guy get injured. And Burke says, "Hey, you got to push the envelope. Accidents happen." And then Big Willie says, "Oh, but look at the target." And they see the target, and the target's completely destroyed. So totally worked. Keep up the R&D. Just try not to injure our guys as badly as we're injuring the targets. DeVray does not like Burke. DeVray correctly has identified Burke as the most evil person she's ever met. And she says, like, "Hey, watch out. Accidents can happen to you too, pal." And then there's the elevator murder, which is an interesting way to murder a mild rival in your office.
Right?
All of a sudden, we're upstairs. We're upstairs near I guess this is where the front office is. There's sort of like a very like corporate office building kind of area with a couple of arcade games in it for some reason. And everybody's got suits and ties. And so DeVray and Singer and Burke are walking out and they're going into the elevator. Burke kind of like holds Singer back and says to him, like, "Wait, you got to stay here." DeVray gets into the elevator. She looks at Burke and suddenly realizes something bad is going to happen. She tries to get out, but the door's closed. There's also two like random guys in ties that she's in the elevator with. Mm-hmm. Burke has rigged the elevator to snap and they fall to their deaths, killing all three of them, apparently.
All three of them.
Yes. So this arcade has a lot of floors. That's one thing. But also, this is not how we handle office politics. And then Burke turns to Singer immediately after the murder, turns to Singer and says, "I'm looking for someone I can trust. Is that you?" And it's like, "Well, I can't go downstairs now. I guess I have to." The amazing thing about this, and this happens multiple times during the movie, homicide with zero consequence. It's just okay.
Yes.
We just kill people and nobody ever mentions them ever again. And then their plan is some more urban weapons testing. Just giving guns out to at-risk youth, putting them even more at risk. Johnny's driving with his police officer friend Norma, who I guess is kind of coded as like an old girlfriend. Martin is riding in the back. So they're in a police car. Martin's riding in the back because of profiling. And the three of them are going to get the new gang program started, which is a little unclear exactly what that means. But it's a new gang program, and Martin hopefully is going to learn not to become part of a gang. The movie is legitimately concerned about gangs and kids in black neighborhoods getting involved in gangs. They are correctly worried about that. They don't have a lot of answers for that question, but it's something that they are concerned about.
You talked about Martin being a jargon generator, and this scene has his best line, which is he talks about getting a job, and she says, "Should you be in school?" And he says, "Why learn when you can earn?"
Yes. Yeah, he heard about a job at Dantastic. They sell these bomb arcade games. I like that both of us just watched the movie and just wrote down all of Martin's lines. And then here's one of them gangs that comes up. They got their own new gang program.
And the leader of the gang is named Slats. He has an eye patch.
Yes, he does. Shaved head with an eye patch. I love Slats. Slats is great.
He's great. So that's Hill Harper. Do you know him?
No, tell me about Hill Harper.
He was on one of the CSIs, Miami, I think.
Oh, really?
He was like the doctor on CSI Miami forever. Yeah. Aww. And now he's on the show The Good Doctor, starring Freddie Highmore as a good doctor.
Oh, so he went straight.
Yeah, he did.
He went from being a gang member. Now he's a respectable doctor. That's great. This really was a new gang program. Got him on his feet. That's fantastic.
It was. Yes.
Oh, good for Slats.
But also, I think his performance in this movie is absurd.
Hilarious.
In the best way.
Totally agree.
I think it's coming up here, right? Like this is where they're doing the heist.
Yes, it is. There's an armored truck that comes and shoots at a bank called CompuBank with their sonic weapon, and it kind of like blows up a whole bunch of stuff apparently in this bank. And then everybody comes out shouting,
They're so loud.
"Firepower, kid! That's what we talking about! Yeah,
Yeah,
boy."
firepower, kid. So good.
And then he says, "Show me the money, baby! Yeah, show Slats the money."
What bank heist is this loud?
This is the first example. There are many in the film of how to be really, really bad at crime.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't want to tell people how to do their job, but I feel like if you're committing a crime, you should try to be more quiet and kind of fly under the radar a little bit. Especially don't shout your own name during the heist.
Right. Right.
That's probably lesson number one that they need to learn. Later on, they actually videotape themselves doing a crime and send it to the press. This is just this is like Instagram crime. What's the point of doing a bank robbery if you're not going to get credit for it later on? They break into the bank vault, they grab some money. So Norma, the police officer, gets the call, and the guys are coming out of the bank, and they shoot their like sonic gun at a police car. Pew, pew, pew. A couple of police officers get out of that car and get shot. And then Norma pulls up in her police car, and Johnny, for some reason, jumps out of the car. Not sure why. He's not trained for this. Martin jumps out as well. Norma's calling for backup. Johnny goes up to the injured officer and he gives him advice, which is stay down, stay down. It's like he already is down. That's the problem.
Right.
The idea is just to get Johnny and Martin out of the car so that Slats and his bad kids can shoot at the police car with their futuristic weapon, and the police car flips over, and Johnny's very upset about that. And he drags injured, unconscious Norma, just drags her out of the crushed car by the scruff of the neck and just like kind of picks her up and runs away with her, and then the car explodes. This is not good healthcare for Norma, I feel.
It's not. Well, and especially because he did such a good job saving Sparky earlier.
I know, right?
I do think it's bizarre that there are two scenes in this, again, pretty short movie.
Yeah.
Of Shaq like saving a woman from a sonic weapons accident.
Yes.
Or whatever. A woman who was also a professional cop or soldier.
Yeah.
You know, like, I don't know.
And pulling her out neck first from an accident.
Right.
Johnny should not be in charge of medical care. This is going to come up again. The gang takes off, except they've left behind one dumb kid named Cutter. Cutter runs, and Johnny kind of like tells Martin, I guess, take Norma to a hospital, and then just leaves the child. And he takes off in pursuit. He has just decided, I'm going to chase this kid around the railroad tracks. This goes on for 3.5 minutes.
It's so long.
On the railroad tracks, accomplishing nothing. Johnny finally catches the kid, but he's shot by one of these futuristic super weapons, which makes him lie down on the ground. And that is all it does. This must be the stun. This must be one of those weapons that just stuns people. So he just kind of lies down and
we just want to leave him stunned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It works. He calls next day. He's on the street at a public phone calling the colonel.
Yes, he sure is.
Johnny's really mad because he knows that like these are he recognizes these weapons. These are the kinds of weapons that he was working on, these stun weapons.
He says, I don't see how those weapons can be here. And Johnny says, I don't see how you can see anything, sir. He calls him sir. That's key.
He does.
With your head so far up your ass. And then he slams down the phone down.
And breaks the phone. So that's crime number one, at least, for Johnny so far.
For Johnny,
yeah. That's a John breaking the phone. That's a John Henry Irons special. He talks to Martin about these guys. Martin says, "Oh, they were wearing purple. Oh, that's the marks. Like he can identify the gang.
He knows them. Yeah.
Yeah. And again, it's like Slats, boys. Stop leaving clues when you go and do a bank job. Do not wear identifying clothing.
Right.
They don't understand that at all. Steel factory. Johnny's on the phone. Johnny's yelling again into the phone because Sparks has been moved to another hospital. He's not good. Johnny's not good on the phone. Basically, every time he gets on the phone, he gets very, very angry. He's not getting good customer service from any of these people. So he finds out that Sparks has been sent to a VA hospital.
In St. Louis, Missouri.
The sad VA hospital. Johnny finds there's Sparks. Sparks cannot walk. She is in a wheelchair. This has apparently come as a surprise to her because the doctors didn't talk to her about it. So she's kind of down. This is a bummer for Sparks.
When Johnny walks in, Do you remember what he says when he walks up to her?
Is it the dirty windows?
Yeah, the dirty windows.
Yeah. Johnny's really super upset about the dirty windows.
He says, man, oh man, and I thought my tax dollars went to keep these windows clean.
Yeah.
That's what he says. They're in St. Louis, Missouri. He doesn't even pay taxes
That is
in
true.
the state that they're in.
Well, he's the windows. This is going to come up in a minute. She doesn't look at him. She's having a lot of feelings. He sits down and he's trying to be encouraging. She says, sometimes you don't get a choice about things. Shit happens. This is her attitude now. Johnny tells Sparks that Norma's been hurt by our weapons. They are on the street and I could use your help. And she does not want to go. And Johnny says, what are you going to do? Just sit here and look out the filthy windows? He's really upset about the windows. And what he does is he gets up and bursts open the windows, breaking them.
Yes.
Which is not helpful. Dude, that's a hole in the budget now. Now they got to pay money to fix the windows. He says, we got to go. You're going to help me. And she says, I can't. And he says, girl, you out of here. And she's like, no, stop. I don't want to go. He picks up her wheelchair as she struggles and screams, no, put me down. I don't want to go. And he's like, fuck, I don't care what you want. You're coming with me. Picks up the wheelchair, walks out. Everyone in the room cheers.
They cheer. They high five.
Yeah.
Like the high fives are what give me. It's like, yeah, he's taking her out of here. She doesn't get to finish rehab. Like, yeah.
It's a very heroic moment. And with our female lead struggling unsuccessfully to get out of the movie, this is the end of Act 1 of Steel. I will be releasing Act 2 later on this week. Here's what's coming up. Sparks thanks him for not helping, which is an experience that he should get used to, because not helping is what Johnny does best.
But like the whole appeal of being in a metal suit is that you are entirely encased in a metal suit.
Don't lift him up in the air. Like, this is the character who very specifically should not be airborne.
I cannot stress enough that one of our heroes is in a wheelchair. And the song playing during this montage goes, stand up, come on, stand up.
I looked it up on the internet. Everyone else, Anthony, this is major. This is actually, like, I've got breaking news now for the world. All right, so stay tuned for that. Thank you, Anthony. I will see you back here for Act 2 of Steel on the Superheroes Everyday podcast. Thanks for listening.